Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Improving Compliance webinar. Today's session will be on correction lag. My name is Christian, and I will take you through today's webinar. Now, as we do with other sessions, we do mute everybody, so everyone currently is in a muted state. If there are any questions or concerns during today's webinar, please use the GoToWebinar question area of the control panel there on the right-hand side of your screen, hopefully, and just type in your question, and we'll address it at the appropriate time today. Now, as a reminder that the Blueforce series is designed to provide all of our users the knowledge and obviously give you the critical tools needed to easily and efficiently master the Blueforce system. Now, our webinars will be every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time. And obviously, as always, we are recording these sessions, and I'll be making them available on the ISF Gateway site as well as on YouTube following today's session, as well as all documentation. Specifically today, our slides. And one other document I'll reference in our call today will be available on the ISS Gateway site as well as Google Drive. That's another site we have. And those links were sent out to you a couple of weeks ago. But I do have them here listed within the documentation for your future reference as well. Now, our session today is on correction lag. So correction lag is one of the 5 metrics that we look at on a weekly basis. And we're going to first answer that question is, what exactly is correction lag? What does that mean? And then we're going to give you a quick insight as to how correction lag is calculated in the system. We're going to go through and identify who are the top 10 sites that are leading the pack, quote unquote, on the correction lag metric. And then we're going to go through and show you how to improve on the correction lag topic as well. So a lot of things to cover today, all around the metric of correction lag. Now, I'd like to start off our conversation today with a quick opening thought. And that opening thought is pretty simple. Ensuring that the employees can successfully punch in and out will have a positive effect on not only your correction lag score, but on all 5 compliance metrics. So as I go through today's session, I'll refer multiple times to the importance of the employees punching in and punching out. So this is really just a good continuation of our last 3 webinars, which we covered in the invalid punch discussion. The first week we did these series sessions, followed by our time change and manual punch sessions as well. But all relates back to the employees punching in and punching out successfully. So what exactly is correction lag? You know, that is the big question of the moment. What is correction lag? What does that mean? So correction lag can be best described as the number of hours from the time of punch in, the date and time, to the last edit of the pay line. So basically, when you finalize the time entry, for those pay lines where the employee punched in or out. So the employee is punching in and out on their own. The correction lag is basically looking at the number of hours it takes from the time the employee actually punched in to the time that the time record was finalized. So if you have to go back in there and make any changes, you have to go in there and make any adjustments, and the employee actually punched in, that's what we're referring to. Now, for situations where the manual time was actually added to Blueforce, the number of hours for the correction lag score is actually determined from the punch in, date and time, and the date and time the pay line was added to the system. So correction lag really is detrimental to your score, the second bullet point is very detrimental to your score whenever you enter manual time at the end of a pay period. Because once again, if this is something that you wait till the end of the pay period to take care of, you can quickly see how the correction lag could quickly soar out of control. Because once again, it's taking the initial punch that you go in there and add to the system and look at the difference of the actual day you entered in the system. This is why we go back and stress continually the use of daily reviews. Make sure that everyone's going in there and reviewing your time on a daily basis and correcting the issues as they occur instead of waiting, you know, a week or 2 weeks after the fact to actually make that correction. So more so, give you some examples of correction lag and what exactly is meant here. Is that, you know, when an employee has punched in and out on their own, let's say, for example, on Monday, the employee punched in at 4:00 p.m., which is 1600, with a punch out of 000, which basically means midnight. So they worked 4 to midnight, but the employee had an invalid punch when he or she was actually clocking out. So on Tuesday, the supervisor comes in, goes into Blueforce, and approves that invalid punch at 12 noon. So the system's going to then say, all right, well, the invalid punch occurred at midnight. The supervisor approved it at 12 noon. Therefore, I'm going to give you a total correction lag result of 12 hours. It took 12 hours to make that correction. And that is actually good. That's a good thing. The supervisor got there, noticed it, and corrected the issue immediately. Now, another example, that same employee on Monday punches in at 8 o'clock in the morning, punches out at 1600, as is 4 p.m. that afternoon. The employee had an invalid punch when punching in. So the 8 o'clock punch was invalid. It had a missed fingerprint or some issue that's causing an invalid punch. Now, on Friday, the supervisor decides he's going to wait until 6 p.m. on Friday that evening to actually go and approve that punch. So now keep in mind, that punch happened back on Monday. No reviews had occurred until Friday evening. In that case, the system is calculating all those hours it took to make that correction, and it equates to about 106 hours of lag time. So the bottom line, the lag time is really just the duration of the time it takes for that correction to be made. Now, another example here is, let's say this pay line was added to the system manually this time. The employee didn't punch in. It was a manual punch. So on Monday, the employee actually did punch in at 5 o'clock at 1700, but failed to punch out. So the system is now on you now, is waiting for you to go in there and tell it what was the out punch. So let's say on Tuesday, the out punch is entered by the supervisor as a manual punch of 2200 that night. So on Monday nights, out punch is 2200. The employee ended up with time from 5 to 10. Now, the time was actually entered at 12 noon into the system. So at this point, the system says, all right, well, I'm entering a manual time entry at 10 p.m. and the punch actually entered at 12 noon the next day. So therefore, the total correction lag or time that has gone by is equal to 14 hours. So your lag time there would be a 14-hour measurement. Same thing with the next example. Monday, the punch-in was at 8 a.m. with no punch-out once again. But this time, the supervisor waited till Friday to make that out punch correction. Now, if you're not doing the daily reviews, this is exactly what's going to happen to you. If you wait until 4 o'clock to make that out punch, and it's a manual entry now, the punch is going to be calculated based on what the original punch was supposed to be, with the difference in time looking at the actual time the punch was entered in the system. In this case, the punch was entered at 6 o'clock that evening, or 1800. Therefore, the total lag time between the time the employee should have punched out and the time that the punch was actually corrected is a whopping 98 hours. So now you can see how the system is now noting that it's taking you exceptionally a long time to make that correction. So going through this, it is important that daily time review is occurring to minimize your correction lag. Now, we do understand it's going to take you time. You're not going to be able to do it immediately. You're going to have a couple hours lag. That's understandable. That's explainable. I mean, there's no way around that. However, the daily time review will help you minimize the total correction lag. Now, corrections in Blueforce have to be completed by the next business day. That is the rule of thumb. That actually has been a rule of thumb since day one. We want you to have it done by the next business day. I think actually to that point, we actually had a nice rule of thumb that we wanted you to have it done by 2 p.m., I believe, local time, the next day. I think that was the original kind of rule of thumb, because we used to have reports that used to be sent out to all submitters and approvers every day, every afternoon. I think we wanted the cutoff to be at 2 p.m. Central, and then because that report will be sent out at 3 p.m. Central. And those are for the ones that have been on Blueforce for quite some time now. Now, we've actually changed all that process, because we no longer have that harsh deadline, because we don't no longer send out that report automatically. So now we have Hubble. So to that point, the general rule of thumb is just that the corrections were made sometime by the next business day. So you have essentially punches for yesterday, you'll be able to correct them today. Now, the way this actually equates to and kind of breaks down, I'll show you here on the next slide, is there is some hours rules kind of to look at, or hour parameters to look at as you try to determine your score, and I'll explain that here momentarily. But bottom line, making sure that your employees punch in and punch out will basically eliminate the need for manual punches, which along with eliminating invalid punches will always improve your correction lag score. So bottom line, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the first slide of the session today is, the common thought here for the day is, make sure that your employees are successfully punching in and punching out. So the question now becomes is, how is this correction lag calculated? Well, making corrections in a timely manner is always the key to earning that 4.0. And I will show you here on the next slide who are those 4.0 sites. This is basically locations that are making your correction lag within the next business day time frame. And really what it equates to is, if you make your corrections to your time, your correction lag score will be a 4.0 when you do that within 36 hours of the actual punch. So that being said, if an employee has an invalid punch, if you correct it within 36 hours, you're within the 4.0 compliance area. If you go in there and enter a manual punch for some missed time, an employee had an issue punching in yesterday, and you entered it and you do it within the 36-hour time frame, once again, you will be in that 4.0 compliance range. Now it breaks down like this. Anything less than 36 hours is a 4.0 score. Anything between 36 and 48, which is now 2 days, is actually going to be in that three-point range. Anything between 48 and 72 hours now falls into that 2-point range. Anything between 72 hours and 96 hours, which is basically your three-day plus threshold, that's going to be in your 1-point range. And if it's anything more than 96 hours, well, you're getting 0 for that score. So bottom line, timely manner, essentially next business day, have your time fixed in there and corrected. Now keep in mind, correction lag is calculated by day, but it's actually at the end of the week, or actually more so at the end of the week of that 5-week period that's automatically generated on your Hubble compliance metrics. That 5-week period is automatically going to average your score. So if you have one bad day where you really forget to do a correction lag on a punch for 4 or 5 days, that's really not going to hurt you in the big scheme of things, because you're going to have an average over that whole period. So keep that in mind in the background. Just one off day, I guess you're going to say, one bad day is not going to affect your overall score that much. So how are we doing? Who are the top 10 ISS areas that are essentially leading the pack when it comes to correction lag? So these are the top 10 areas right now with the best correction lag, and you can kind of go through and see those sites. All these sites have very little issues, or they actually go in there and correct them immediately or shortly after they occur. So the correction lag is not great at all. So you can kind of see everyone has done remarkably well when it comes to correction lag. Now, kind of breaking it down, like I said, once again, not to take away from anybody else that might be shortly off the list, we had quite a few sites that were barely off the top 10. They were like at 369 or 368. So I don't want to discredit them. But overall, the 300 districts that we have across the U.S. and Canada, we have 65 districts that had a perfect 4.0 score. So those district managers and those employees, those Blueforce users in those areas were doing exceptionally well with the system. We also had 70 districts that had a score between 3.5 and 3.99. Overall, 45% of our company is compliant as far as hitting this 3.5 goal for correction lag. Now, that really basically means it's a high percentage, but it's still definitely a metric that we can all improve on. So, kind of going through here is, how do you improve on correction lag? And correction lag, it's a topic that there are a lot of things you can do to help correction lag. Bottom line, the first thing I mentioned is make sure your employees are punching in and punching out, and they're having success in doing so. That way it limits, any other avenue for error or other avenue for issues, per se, as we go through and talk about correction lag. But how do you improve correction lag? Well, first off, like I said, ensure your employees are punching in and out correctly. Make sure that your editors and or submitters are reviewing their times and making any edits as needed by the next business day. Now, I use the word edit here, but keep in mind, we should not be editing, for those that were on part of the time change session, we shouldn't be changing employee times. So we don't want to be going in there and changing employee times, especially those unnecessary scenarios. But bottom line, if there is an edit that needs to be made or some type of correction, we want to do it by the next business day. And this involves two key areas. That's either doing it by a daily review and editing of time cards, or by simply adding manual time cards as needed. And I'm going to go through those two key areas here momentarily. And lastly, obviously, supervisors at all the clock sites, reviewers, must correct any missed in or out punches on the clock at the end of the shift, as well as approve any invalid punches. Now, one of the guidelines we have had since day one for all of our clock users is that we implore you to go in and get your supervisors, your leads, your key, your key management team there at your job sites to actually go in and make the corrections, review your invalid punches, etc. on the time clock at the end of their shift. What this does, it actually really minimizes, really lowers that correction lag time, which improves your correction lag score. If you're not doing that now, I'll explain a little later in this call the importance of doing so, getting those supervisors involved. And I'm specifically talking to those that have clocks, Walter time clocks at those sites. So let's talk about the first one. And essentially, we can talk about employees punching in and punching out all day, but that's pretty key. That's number one. The second bullet here talks about editors and submitters reviewing and editing time for their jobs by the next business day. Now, the way you do that, obviously, is do your daily review and editing of time cards. Now, this function is done by going into the time card view in Blueforce, as pointed here, and this shows the main home or main screen of Blueforce. We can actually go in and click on the little clock icon, and that takes you to the time card screen, time card view. Now, when you're in the time card view, you have the ability here to go in there and actually see a specific date range. If you want to say, I just want to see yesterday's time, I can go in there and put a date range for just yesterday's dates. More so, I can then go in there and select a punch type of just open and zero punches. Now, let me stress to you, and for those that have heard me do this spiel before on time card use, will know that it's probably important that you pay attention here and actually just select open and zero punches when you go to your time card reviews. Now, keep in mind, we have employees. We know the employees that never have issues. We know the employees that punch in and punch out successfully all the time. But then on the other side of the coin, we also have those employees that are always having issues. So why do we need to go and look at those good punches when all we care about right now for the initial review is to make sure that all the bad punches are resolved immediately? Bad punches is being missed fingerprints, calls from unregistered phone numbers, those type of invalid punches that are involved. So for that matter, we can go to that punch type field, show open and zero punches only, and then lastly click on search, and this will just pull up all the quote-unquote bad punches that are sitting out there that I need to look at. Hopefully when you do a search there, nothing comes up because everyone is punching in and punching out correctly, but what you will know is you will encounter certain different situations when you do this functionality. So when you go in there and say show open and zero punches, you're going to see any open punches, anyone's missing an in or out, any punches that are invalid, those will pop up as well. And as far as zero punches goes, it'll show you any zero punches, punches that have no time to them. Basically, for whatever reason, the employee punched in and punched right back out, those that tabulate to zero total time. So as I mentioned, one of the scenarios you will encounter when you review times is this one on the screen, where you see all of your time cards with a black status field, and this black status field here on the left-hand column will show you that they're all waiting for an out punch. That waiting for the out punch is letting you know that the employee is either currently working. Keep that in mind. Whenever you see this, just don't flip out. This is the word I'm saying. Don't start fixing punches just because you think that you need to fix them all. Sometimes when you go and see this, it just basically means that the employee is still working, the system is still waiting for an out punch, or the employee simply forgot to clock out at the end of the shift and is gone for the day. To that, this can be corrected by entering the correct clock out time in the timeout field. And to do this, you just simply go and edit the time card. Now, when you go in here and edit the time card, what you're going to be doing is you're going to select the small little check boxes to the left of the time card. When you click on that checkbox, you then have the ability, sorry about that, you have the ability to now go in and pick the one you need. Actually, let me go back to the slide, sorry. Pick the actual time card you want to make the edit on, and once you select it, you click on the Edit Selected Time Card option. And this is not cooperating with me, I apologize. There we go. And you actually go in there and actually click on Edit Selected Time Cards, to which now you can go in there and enter the missed out time in this particular scenario. So it does give you the ability there to go through and make your adjustments as needed to your times. Now, as you go through and going back to this, I'm going to go back one screen real quick. As I go back one screen, you will actually see that you have the ability to go in here and that show punch type, show open and zero punches. So from that little small area, you have the ability to go in there and hit search again, and the system will actually take off any of the corrected punches off of your checklist. This is kind of more serves as a good checklist, so you can go through and see, all right, well, now I fixed them. Let me go back and do one more check to make sure that I don't have any open or zero punches out there. And when nothing returns, then you know that you've taken care of all those punches for that given date range. Now keep in mind, this process initially should only take 5 to 10 minutes. This is not a day-long process. Once again, we're only looking at those bad punches. We're only looking at those punches of issues. Now, if someone is having an issue with punching out, then let's address it with the employee. Find out, why exactly you're not punching out. Is there an issue with the clock, or is the clock not accessible when you're trying to punch out? Maybe it's locked behind closed doors, which we've heard many a times around the company. So find out. Not only fix the punch, because it gets old by going in there and fixing the punch every time. Now keep in mind, we are talking about correction lag, and yes, if I go in here and go in there and try to enter a out punch that an employee missed, that is a manual punch. You're gonna save yourself on the correction lag score, but it's still a manual punch. So the manual entry will still be counted against you, quote unquote, obviously. So you'll have that on the manual punch metric kind of go down just a couple ticks because we entered a manual punch. So once again, let's get to the problem. Don't do this on a daily basis. If the employee's having issues clocking out, let's go ahead and talk and find out what is it causing you that out punch issue. Now on the reverse side, if you see waiting for in, just like pictured here in my screenshot, you can go into the Edit Selected Time Card option one more time and now fix the in punch and only focus on the in punch. Now, more so as we go through, that's the out and in. That's the more common ones that you'll see in the system. So that's totally normal. But one other situation that you'll occasionally will see is the approval pending, which shows just like this in the screenshot at the bottom of the screen, where you'll see the status of approval pending for any punches where an employee had an issue either on the Walter because of a mismatched fingerprint error, or because on phone-in they had an issue with the unauthorized phone number. Maybe they called in from a wrong number, or they called in from their own personal cell phone number, and those numbers weren't registered on the job, so it's going to be flagged as an invalid punch. Even so, also on the mobile punch, maybe someone clocked in outside the given radius of the job site. Maybe they're 4 miles from the job when they're trying to punch in, so this is going to let you know that it's an invalid punch. Now, in all cases, the system will record the invalid punch in Blueforce. You'll always see the punch there as shown there on the far right in the black background and yellow text. But what the system will not do for you is it will not treat it as a punch that can be totaled into the actual employee's hours. So what that actually stands, it's going to stay there until you actually approve that punch, being that you actually verify that that was a valid punch, and you actually, for better terms, spoke to the employee, and the employee knows how to now properly punch in. So you actually will approve this by using Approve Selected Time as the function here. You select the box on the left, the top of the grid, and click on approve selected time cards. Now, as I mentioned, the punch remains there. If the employee had a clocked out and you had an in that was invalid and an out that was perfectly fine, or both were invalid for that matter, the system will not calculate the total hours worked. It will remain 0 until you come in here and approve that punch. So it's also important, not from the simple fact, yeah, that was, as everyone here with, these times in Blueforce go over to the monthly labor forecast functionality. So those that are involved with the budgeting tool that we have and our monthly labor forecast tools that we have, all this is all intertwined. So if we have any employees in here that are sitting all week with 0 time, and then all of a sudden we come in here and say it's approved and the system forces that time into the monthly labor forecast reports, all of a sudden a job that looks very good from a budget standpoint, that we're ahead of the game. We're 100 hours ahead of budget. Woohoo! And then you go through here and said approve, and all of a sudden approve the punch, or way down after the fact go in and enter the manual punch to fix the entry for the employee. Now all of a sudden that job, when the reporting gets updated, doesn't look quite so hot because we waited so long to make those changes. So it's important that we do the daily review and we make these corrections as they occur or as soon thereafter. Now you also notice that as you go through and go through the process of approving punches, you're going to be able to go through and actually see the punches with a kind of a legend that's also available for you. So at the very top of the grid in your time card screen, there is a legend link that you can click on that'll pop up this little picture at the bottom of the screen where you can actually see all the different colors of the different punches that are involved. So for example, the Walter punches needing approval will always appear with a yellow text and black background. So if I look down down the right-hand side here, I'm going to see if I can pull up my little pen marker here. You can actually see on here that any unapproved or unmatched punch is going to come up with a black background. You'll also see here also unapproved Walter punches, black background. You also have phone-in punches with a black background, but the one difference you'll see here is that it has green lettering or green text for you. And I don't like the iPunch terminology here, but really the mobile punch is what we're using down at the bottom. This mobile punch is actually also going to have a black background with yellow text. So real quickly, when you go into the time card screen, you may see black background with yellow text. Don't think they're always Walter punches because once again the mobile punches will appear the same way. But this legend is showing all the different types of color schemes that are available in Blueforce on the time card views that you can actually go through and pull that up by, once again, there's a time card legend link at the top left-hand corner of right above the top left-hand corner of your grid, your time card grid, to which you can click on and then pop up that screen at any time. So this is the scenarios of going in there and doing what we're referring to as approving punches. Now on the other side of the coin here, we obviously understand that you will time to time have to add manual time cards. And that's perfectly fine. If you have to add manual time, we have to make sure the employee is being paid correctly. Obviously we want to refrain from doing so much manual entry. We want to actually make sure the employees are punching in and punching out. But the key thing here is to not wait till the end of the pay period to enter your manual time. As they showed in the example at the very start of our call, if you are waiting to the end of the pay period to do all of your manual entries, let's say once again it's Friday now and the manual entry occurred on Monday, the system is taking that total time from the time you enter that punch, from the current day and time that you enter that punch, back to the actual day when that punch was supposed to have happened. That total difference is your correction lag. So the longer you wait, the worse of a score you're going to get. And unfortunately, that metric might be more of a detriment to those that are in a biweekly pay period if they are indeed waiting 2 full weeks to make a time change. So bottom line, do not wait until the end of the pay period. Do it by the next business day. And this is also done from the time card screen. So as a quick little funny reminder here, don't forget, don't forget the manual punch. And the analogy that I always make on here is that, you know what, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, much less what I had for breakfast last week. So to that particular note is, you don't know, you may not remember an employee not punching, much less wait a week or two later after the fact to actually have them come back and try to provide some detail for you, or you try to remember what exactly occurred. So kind of furthermore with that, whenever you want to add a punch into the system, you actually do that from the time card screen. So what you can do is go in, first select the employee list, and you go in there and actually select the employee's name off of that listing. It's a drop-down. And that drop-down is going to correspond to whatever jobs you're currently working with on the time card screen. So if I selected 2 jobs I wanted to work with at a particular moment in time, only those employees that are associated to those jobs will be available on that drop-down list. So just keep that in mind. Now, once I go into that view, I can now go in and click on Add Time Card. The key thing here is you first have to select that employee before you click on Add Time Card. Otherwise, the system will give you a little nasty little note on the screen telling you to do so. So avoid yourself some system griping and just go in there and pick the employee and then hit Add Time Card. Now, after that, you can go in there and enter the missing punches. Once again, just check the time and date on all those punches, make sure they're correctly entered, and then go in there and put in the reason code that you want to actually correspond to the reason you're making this addition or this manual entry. So once again, if I'm going in there and making a manual entry from 2:30 to 10:45 today, I can go in there and put in a reason of employee fault. Maybe time was added because it was the employee's fault, or time was added because it was a system issue. Whenever you use these reason codes, it is important to all of us, you and I, that we make sure that we put in the correct reason code. And reason being is, these reason codes, there will be a metric that will be available later down the road in the future that'll add to the reporting. So in the dashboard, you'll be able to go in there and see how many times the manual punch was because of a system issue versus employee forgot, or because there was a work-related issue, whatever it may be. We can divvy those up. That we're going to provide the correct reason code here. Now, once you're done, going in there and entering as many times, there's multiple lines there that are available. The only criteria there is that you cannot enter time for time that's ready in the system. So if you ever try to go in there and enter a punch for time that's ready in the system, or if it overlaps, it's going to kind of gripe at you back and letting you know that you have an overlapping punch, that you cannot do what you're trying to do. Now, once you're done, you're going to go in there and click Save. You're going to go in and hit Close, and the time card is actually going to show your additions highlighted in yellow. So one of the little key colors of time card legend is a yellow background. That yellow background designates that it's a manual entry. So whenever you see that anywhere in the timesheet or time card or timesheet view, that's letting you know that someone has gone in there and entered a manual punch, which is now going to count against you, possibly on the correction lag score, but more so on the manual punch score. Now, the full documentation of this daily review and editing, there's a document, it's about 6 or 7 pages long, that we put together probably a year and a half ago. It's been out. A lot of you have already seen this document, but I will make it available out on Google Drive as soon as this webinar is done as well. So you can go out there and review these step-by-step processes on your daily time review. And also, and kind of that's the same slide, I apologize. All right. So how do I improve correction lag from the time clocks? So for those the points I mentioned a little while ago, is one of the key things you can do is involve your supervisors at the clock sites to go ahead and correct any missed in or out punches on the clock at the end of their shift, as well as approve any of those invalid punches. So to that, the employees can actually punch in and punch out like they normally do. If they have an issue, the reviewers can go into the administrative menu to correct punches. Now, the reviewer role is right now the only role that's out there that only allows access to the Walter device. Now, if you are an editor, submitter, or approver, you have access to the Walter device, but you also have access to Blueforce. And that's the main difference between a reviewer role and all the other roles. Reviewers only have access to the Walter device and do not have access to Blueforce. Now, an editor can make the basic edits and corrections in Blueforce directly. They don't have to be at the clock. And that really encompasses those phone-in, mobile, and web punch scenarios, because those scenarios really are only editable in Blueforce. Now, I strongly suggest that you involve your supervisors in these capacities, because we all know that if by not including those supervisors, those leads, those key contacts, those key employees at the sites, it adds pressure to the district managers, and it adds pressure to the submitters and approvers, because now there's another task or additional stuff they have to go and track down, and ultimately call the site and find out what happened with, Joe or Juan or whoever was at the site, to find out what exactly they did or didn't do. Why didn't they clock in? And if we had someone at the site who could easily go to the clock and take care of this for you, all this would be done and be ready to go for you. It'd be one less hassle you have to worry about. So approving punches on the Walter is a very simple functionality, and this is actually commonly done after the supervisor logs into the clock. Now, the way the clocks work is the supervisor can log into the clock with the intent of not having to punch in or out. Now, the employee doesn't have to punch in or out, and more so the supervisor here I'm talking about, or if maybe it's a salaried district manager that's at the site and they want to do this process. By logging into the clock does not mean you have to punch in and out. You can log into the clock and actually access some administrative functions if need be. However, this functionality of approving punches on a Walter, of this screen, as you'll see here, it's kind of a small screen, I apologize for that, but this will show you that John Smith is the supervisor going into this clock, and once they log in there by simply entering their employee ID and fingerprint, they'll get this screen automatically. This is the first screen they see, even before they see any of the options to punch in and punch out, even before they see any options to go in there and pick any administrative functions. John Smith, in this case, has the ability to approve all punches that are on the system, now as a whole or selectively. What that basically means is right now it's telling you that there's 4 mismatched fingerprints out on the system. What that basically means is there's 4 invalid punches that are sitting on Blueforce as well. If I am the supervisor, I can go in there and say, all right, I want to approve all of them at one time. So all 4 mismatched punches, mismatched fingerprints, all 4 invalid punches that are here, I can approve them all and be done with the process. There is no need to go into Blueforce as a submitter or an editor or a approver to go in there and make any corrections per se anymore, because it's already been done at the clock level. Now, the selectively part allows you now to go in there and say, you know what, there's 4 mismatched fingerprints. Let me see who they are, and I can go in selectively decide if I want to approve those punches or not. This comes into play when there's maybe multiple supervisors working the same shift time, and then they have different crews. They can go in there and say, all right, well, this employee is mine. I want to approve this one. This next employee is not mine. The third one is not mine, but the fourth one is. I want to approve this one. So you can selectively choose which ones you want to approve. Now, once again, this now leaves the burden off of any editor, submitter, or approver to have to go to Blueforce to do this extra step. Now, one thing that always comes up, and it's a good question I always is asked, is do I need to be registered on the clock to actually access the supervisor functions, even if I don't clock in on a daily basis? Well, the answer is no. You don't have to be registered on the clock. All you have to do is have a valid employee ID. Now, for supervisors that do not have to punch in and out, the ePay team, which is myself, Tiandra, Beth, or Jade, one of us can help you, assist you with this process, and we can disable that supervisor's fingerprint. We often do that for our salary team that's out there in the field that actually goes into the clocks and actually wants to do some clock functionality. We normally turn off their fingerprint. But if there is a supervisor at the job site that for some reason or not does not punch in on a daily basis, we can turn off that fingerprint and allow them to access the system with simply just their employee ID. Now, another function a supervisor can do from the administrative menu is correct missed ins and missed outs. So if someone punched in but forgot to punch out, the supervisor can go to the clock and choose the administrative menu. Typically, this screenshot shows number 7. Typically, it's option 6 on our ISS clocks, but I would just say look for the option that's labeled as administrative menu, as these numbers can change around should we want to make a change to the functionality of the clock at some point in the future. But once they go to the administrative menu, the supervisor is then going to get an option, which on this screenshot is option 4 for managing attendance. The system will then allow the supervisor to go in there and identify any missed out punches or missed in punches, for that matter, and go in there and correct that particular punch. So the supervisor can go into an out punch. For example, if someone forgot to punch out at the end of the shift, the supervisor can go and check and see who's still there, who's not there, and if someone already left, they can go in there and fix those punches, which now eliminates one less item that editor, submitter, or approver has to go and mess with in Blueforce, because it's already been done at the time clock. Whenever you approve an invalid punch, or whenever you go and make a manual change at the clock level, those changes will sync up at the next sync interval for that time clock. So that time clock is syncing, let's say, for example, every 2 hours, then that change would go at the 2-hour time frame. We do have some clocks that are set up to auto sync, which basically means whenever something like this has occurred, within a 2-minute window, the system will automatically push those punches over into Blueforce. So depending on the clock setting as well will determine how fast it gets to Blueforce, but once again, once it's corrected at the clock level, that is one less thing that the editor, submitter, or approver have to do in Blueforce itself. So one of the things I would stress to everyone that's on this phone call is that for those that have a time clock, please go out, I'm imploring you, please go out to the website, go out to the YouTube site where I have a recorded video that details the reviewer role functions that are available on Walter. So the reviewer, there's videos out there on how to register employees, but more so how to go and do some of the functionality that I just showed here today. That's all in a video that's available both in English and in Spanish as needed. And there's a link there, but you can also get that link also once you download this document following our call today. So bottom line, how do you improve correction lag? In short, just making sure that the employees punch in and punch out, and they're successful in doing that. That's going to eliminate the need for those manual punches, along with eliminating invalid punches, which always improves your correction lag score. So once again, correction lag is much broader picture. Correction lag looks at the time interval it takes for you to make those changes, but more so, it pulls in, your manual punches, it pulls in your invalid punches, and looks at that information as well. So if you eliminate manuals and the need for manual punches, if you eliminate the need for invalid punches, there is no reason why your correction lag score cannot be a 4.0. So kind of to wrap up, furthermore, with support issues, if you have any questions, any concerns for anything you saw today, please go into the help desk ticketing system. You can use that link right in the middle of the screen there and put in a help desk ticket, or you can call the help desk line at 210-495-6093. And we always ask for a help desk ticket. That way we can go through and assure that all of our end user requests don't get overlooked in some support technician's email and or voicemail box and left unanswered. So please, the help desk ticket is always being monitored, and there's a few of us here that can actually assist with those any issues you may have. So kind of in wrapping up, I want to say thank you for joining us today for our correction lag webinar. Next week will be we'll cover our fifth metric, which is the rate change metric. And furthermore, the week after that, I believe we have scheduled right now a session on alerts, which talks about employee alerts and system stuff that we can set up. So a lot of things coming up, but once again, join us every Tuesday or Thursday at 2 p.m. Central for our continuation of our Mastering Blueforce, the weekly series webinars. Until next time, thank you for joining me, and you have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thank you.